Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back, friends and fiends. We're gonna jump in. We're gonna do we're working a little bit more on that hex stocking document that I've been working on. Taking my very large hex stocking document that's like 50 pages, we're gonna try to condense it down into a incredibly simplified version that people always ask me about it. So I was like, giving you this big 50-page doc with a bunch of like shorthand stuff is not, I don't think, super gonna be way less useful for people than you think it might be. So I thought, well, let me try to make a simplified version of it that people can actually use, and then I'll throw it up on TTRPG. Who knows? I'll probably throw it up through my coffee, or no, I haven't set up anything on itch.io before, but I might do that. Or as I always like to call it, Itch.io. That's a very cute name. But yeah, we played a little D&D over the weekend. That was that. I was running, so, and what to say about it on either game, really. Let's go ahead and hop in. I mean, without further ado, let me get it. How about that? That sounds like a good spot for us. Cleaning up one little thing, and then we're gonna jump in. Okay, here we go. I've got to pull this over. Capture. Alright, so this is the first. If you guys have watched me do this before, then this is going to be very familiar to you. Or if you've watched us play this solo RPG or make any of those maps, this document is very familiar to you. But it is quite long. It's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. What we've been trying to do is trying to simplify that down into what can I give you guys that's very easy to use and kind of explain it. It's always weird with a product like this, and product is a very corporate word for it, with a guide or a reference or helpful tool or whatever you want to call it, something like this, and you're like, how much effort do you put in talking about the basics of that? Are you assuming that somebody's grabbing this not knowing anything else that kind of goes into the space, so this might be their very first exposure to something like trying to run a hex map, trying to create a hex map and run a hex crawl? Or is it something that you assume somebody's coming to it with a very, at least middling understanding of things like, oh, I understand generally about what sizes hexes are, I know how to do that, I know what points of interest in the hexes are for, and etc. And I have hex crawl functions, how to actually do the crawl aspect of it at the table already intuited, like I don't even have to look at a reference for it, like I know what to do with it. You never really know, so I'm kind of assuming that people don't. I think that that's the better way to do it. Is this is why I have how to use the document aspect here. Try to make that a title. Playing the hex crawl, hex map. We worked on this a little bit before. The map key, what different things mean within it, and some sort of crawl procedure. Now, crawl procedures are a little bit different depending on what sort of hex crawl you're doing or what system you're using. They're each a little bit different, but they all roughly they're all about, I think I'd say about 80% the same or very, very similar. It's usually just like a few differences as to when do you check for random encounters, or how much time does it take to move through the hexes, though that takes a lot into hex size as well. I guess I should put in this. I guess that should really be a separate part of this. Hex size / scale. Now, I have a preferred hex scale that I use. Actually, I have numerous hex scales. We've talked about this before. There's actually 4 different scales with hexes within hexes within hexes within hexes. So that means we can zoom all the way out and look at a full world map, and it's not too busy. Or we can zoom all the way into the super local area, and we're looking at hexes that are about 2 nautical miles wide, which is 2 and some change statute miles. I use nautical miles specifically because it's a little bit closer to 3 miles an hour, so it makes good for like hourly pace of walking, which is about standard walking speed, especially if you are laden down with gear, and assuming that you're not walking on a graded, paved, flat surface where you can easily walk faster than people are walking closer to sort of 3.5 miles per hour. Whereas if you're backpacking, really the rule of thumb is about 2 to 2.5 miles per hour. kind of assuming, and I think that that rate of travel functions a lot closer to what we would expect out of something like D&D adventuring, things like that. So that's why I use the nautical miles now. That's one of the reasons. The second reason is that nautical miles mathematically go very easily into degrees of latitude and longitude, which means the scaling between a very, very small hex all the way up to a world map that's roughly Earth-sized, very, very easy mathematically. So I don't have a lot of weird remainder numbers. I don't have a lot of weird decimals or fractions that I have to deal with most of the time. So we have down there, what are the points of interest and or abbreviations for that? Unbalanced world, APL, varying levels of danger. We kind of explain a lot of those things. And I guess we talked about it down here. I should have... It's been a minute since I've looked at this, I'll be honest. That's why I want to get back into it. Well, that's not exactly true. I've been working on the latter part of it. I haven't looked at the top part of it here in a minute. Hex dimension, so we talked about 3-mile hexes. I would also probably put in here, like 6-mile hexes are pretty popular. Which, depending on who you talk to, is a day or a few hours, or I'm trying to think of. I'm thinking of. So from here to there, which is one of the things I picked up at last week in day. So I picked that up. I wanted to check what their hex is. I think it's and how many talks about how many you can. I already read through this once. Each hex is 6 miles across, measured face to face. Yeah, they have a table down here for miles per day, which I'm not really sure why they didn't break it down into hexes per day. Because they do, because I'm not sure how useful it is to go into, like, and get through part of a hex in a day. Seems like a lot of extra math that I honestly don't want to do as a game master. Because depending on your movement rate, which is very different from how I run these, you guys have seen how I do in the solo RPG. If you watch those, is that I don't really like struggling or keeping track of the pace and doing that stuff, so I have a different system where it's kind of uses constitution as its a measurement of how far you can go in a day and how much you can do in a day, which I think dovetails really nicely into how much you explore in a site and do those things. It can roughly take the expenditure of what you do in a day as that ratchets up and graph it pretty cleanly most of the time onto what time of day it will, with some with some amount of ambiguity, in that you're not going to be like, oh, it's exactly 2:30, but you'll be like, it's about 2, or about getting towards mid-afternoon. And I like that ambiguity both because it allows me, the more mutable time is, especially time of day, the more easily it is for me. It's like, oh, I want them to reach some place, or I think this place would be best encountered at twilight, or dusk, or sundown, or before sundown, or something like that. So it gives me a little bit of wiggle room as a DMG. Yeah, travel pace is pretty much 30 feet for everybody. So they're like, in light forest, that's 18 miles per day. You're hoofing it if you're making 18 miles a day. As somebody who's done plenty of backpacking, you're hoofing it pretty well if you're going 18 miles. Now, they might be riding horses too, and that helps. So light forest, and that would be 3 hexes. 2 hexes in heavy forest, which would be 12 miles. And if they're on the road, they can do 23 miles. Why 23? Why didn't you make it 24? Seems like they, for whatever reason, specifically made it not 24. Interesting. I don't know why. I'm looking at the numbers and trying to find like a mathematical reason for why these numbers are different, and they don't really parse like that exactly. I'm not sure what their thoughts were. Maybe their thoughts were, because if you had 24, that would be 8. Look at the map real quick. No, I mean, you can't get all the way down the road. You can get most of the way down the road, though. I don't know why they chose to do it that way. Anyways, that's a different scale you can use. So six hexes, mile hexes is pretty common. So I think realistically, people traveling are not going to be traveling quite that fast. It's one of the things that always irks me a little bit about D&D and hexcrawl stuff is that it very often doesn't seem to be. They seem to be pulled like anecdotally from like for pace from things like Roman legionnaire marching, and that's very different than what I would consider what adventurers do, which I would think a little bit more aligned with contemporary backpacking, or even say maybe mid 20th century backpacking, where the gear's not quite as good, the trails aren't quite as well rated and kept taken care of. They're much better than they would have been, or just trucking through the wilderness. That's neither here or there. So we got our checking for points of interest. When does a point of interest come up? And if it does, what do you roll on? You roll on this chart, which is our 1d20. Same thing that we use over here. Really no different. The only part that's, I think, different in here is that because this is supposed to be a really simplified one, I'm not making the distinction about whether you roll a d12 or a d20 on it. That's about different. So that's different, which will probably look weird if this is the first time somebody looks at this document, because they're going to be like, why is the roll twice and combined results in the middle of the table? Well, because it's at that break point between rolling a d12 and rolling a d20. Obtain the point of interest on your hex map and complete its entry in your hex map key using the entry template. And we have the entry template. So we have a little example that I've used, which is one of the ones that we have in my current world. I think this is technically from, yeah, that's from the county scale map. So I should actually put a little bit on here. So I was talking about maybe doing that for the text dimensions per APL. That's kind of a maybe not thing. So it depends if what we want to do that. I guess we should introduce what the play tiers. Standard play tiers. And again, you could break this up however you want to, depending on what system you're using. Kind of always going to assume that somebody's using the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons for whatever I'm making it for. Is most popular rule. Okay. /5.5, and that's going to be 1 through 4, 5 through 10, 11 through 16. And 17 plus 17 through. And this keeps it nice and easy. I like using this. Now, obviously, I said that I have 4 tiers of adventure and 4 scales of hex map. So, with my own system, those fit together really well. They're meant to. But you don't have to do it that way. It is the way that I have found useful. I think most people who are interested in doing a hex crawl style of game are generally playing a lower level D&D or lower level whatever OSR or OSE kind of feeling game. Anyways, so the high level stuff's not as important, but that average party level and being able to shift stuff within that is important. Then we've got our POIs. We've got our intro template, which says what hex is it in, give it some sort of name so you can refer to it, and what kind of the average party level, what is the average challenge of the point of interest in that text. Then after that is a description of it, occupation, okay, if there are anything living in there, any creatures, be they good common folk, nobles, monsters, etc. And then some sort of spark, which is just kind of a little jumping off point if you're trying to think of, adventure that might take place there, or something that might be going on there. Actually, probably won't include an goal. I'll probably put it. I have one I've been working on, but it's nowhere close to being done, honestly. To the point where it's like the primary issue I'm having is I'm trying to pare stuff down. I've got one half, like I've got the action portion pretty much done, but the theme portion is still got to do a lot of cutting. Trying to figure out stuff. I think I've got like 250 entries, and I need to get it down to like 100. So trying to figure out what things I can combine together, and what things are just I'm just gonna have to cut if I want to make that D100 list. A little description of which you are. Yeah, I think even here I'm like, yeah, try the solo dark ones. Those are the ones I'm using. Themes for that, helpful, and the point of interest descriptions, which is where we're going to pick up our work on. We were down to number 8, isolated homestead. And just kind of a brief overview of what the thing is. Because a lot of these I don't have brief for, because I don't need them. I made the table, I know what they mean. But somebody who's trying to use the table probably not going to know what it means. So an isolated homestead, even though I don't think, does it have it up here? This is going to shear down one. This is the thing that I need to make already for this anyways, for my main table. So occupation. Usually what I do is I use this guy right here, sublocal. So we're going to grab this. So if I build like a holding or a religious site, any of those things usually come with a smaller settlement attached to it. So, and for the settlement, it tells you right here what they would be at each site. So at a hamlet, it's about 50 to 400 people is the size of settlement you're going to come across. And that's important because it determines the kind of economic buying power they have, buying and selling, trading power. Or I use 10% of the population as basically how much gold they can interact with. So if it's 50, place with 50, you can buy and sell items, services that are up to about 5 gold. So obviously there are things that you need to go to the big city for, which kind of becomes part of the Hexcrawl adventure, being like, oh, if I'm looking for a very specific magic weapon or magic item that's really expensive, we know you're going to have to go to some places that's got more people in it. It's going to greatly increase your chance of being able to find that if you just want to outright buy it. Which I've got all that stuff for buying. Okay. But say if you got a castle that's at the league size or keep, it doesn't come with a hamlet. It comes with this steading, so up to 50. And I want to do the same for isolated homesteads, except that I think it makes more sense for that to be dropped even further. The occupation. So we'll just put it down as settlement. And we're going to drop these a little bit. Now, Atlas, never going to show up the Atlas level. So we've got these. So sublocal is going to be 01 to 05. So we're dropping it even further. We're going to drop this to steading. I wanted to do it one more because it doesn't make sense for an isolated homestead at that league level to have anybody else kind of around with it. So it's really just who's living there. So an isolated homestead is going to be about that 1 to 5. They might have like a neighbor, maybe. And really, I should make this like 0, 0. Just to be like, sometimes there's just nobody there. Sometimes it's just the one person who's at the studying. Because when we talk about the castle population of the castle itself is not included in the civilization that's next to it. So then we'd have a setting, which would go 5 to 3. Good width. And then we've got our hamlet. 50 to 400. Copy that. And in a region. And I like this idea because what it does is it takes something that's we were talking about at the league level, which is the lowest level. That's that 2 nautical miles wide hex. There's probably most of the time only that person living there, maybe a couple other people with them. Like that's it. Might be like 2 or 3 little farmhouses clustered around each other that are probably, honestly, they're probably all related. As in, they're all one big family. But that league size, you're going to have a steading. So you start to see, like, this is a small, super small community, just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But isn't large enough. Anything that's like at this size, steadings, even hamlets are less likely to have even names for the place. Again, you might have this and be like, oh, this is like an extended family that's probably together, or a couple of neighbors. At that county level, so once we get to things that are the county level, those hexes are about 10 nautical miles across, side to side, so they're significantly larger. This, now we're looking at sort of a small isolated community. This is a nice thing where I start to look at, oh, this might be a place that's like a commune, or there is something about this place or this person that has drawn some people to them, whether they might be directly related or not once we start getting into this. And then at the region level, these are really big hexes. These are 60 nautical miles across. So this is like a person who's almost got a cult personality, might actually just be a cult, even though a cult would generally fall under more of a religious site. But could be something like, one of the things that we have when we look at our isolated homestead, is you have things like a former adventurer or a mage tower or some sort of civilized monster. Most of these people tend to be kind of powerful, as in like in a CR stat block kind of way powerful. Most of them. Exile and Outcast, maybe not. Former adventurer, definitely. And especially when you're talking about somebody who's like at that region level, that means if you have a retired adventurer, that they are former adventurer that's somewhere in the level range of like 11 to 16, maybe even higher. You're considering their actual rating for a group of 11 to 16 adventurers. It might be actually a very powerful former adventurer or mage, their tower. So it's likely that people are kind of around them because that's a relatively safe place to be, in a place where there's not a lot of other stuff that's going on. So even though they might have tried to isolate themselves, there are people that are kind of drawn to them for the power that they have. And remember that the way we're rolling up here is that when the further out away they are from the heartlands, the less likely it is there's any of these at all. But it truly is just like a person living off by themselves. And I guess we could just living off by themselves. But I like this sublocal one. This reminds me of like I feel like it comes up mostly in Old West kind of stories, where there's some sort of drifter that comes into a farmhouse and they're just like a hired help person with a mysterious background or mysterious past that the people who basically allow them to work on their farm or ranch for meal and room and board, usually. And they don't really know anything about them, but they do good work and they kind of keep to themselves and they're quiet, so why not? And then that can be the adventure thing and be like, oh, now there are people who are being endangered because of this past of whatever they did. And any of these could kind of fall into that. This also makes sense for hill folk. So hill folk is just my general term for what in D&D, I guess 5e would be called like outlanders or barbarians, people who live outside sort of general civilization. They kind of do their own thing. And they might not be physically outlaws. Outlaws are also up there. They might not be like these people are wanted by the law, but people who are like, I'm either they have left the civilized lands or they have been pushed out of the civilized lands, or any number of reasons. Anything from race and ethnicity to their beliefs to whatever. And so it makes sense for like you might have a hill folk that's got a full hamlet around them, so it's just a hamlet then of hill folk, most likely. Great, so now we've got that added. I like that. Now we've got to write up what it is. So we're trying to do basically like a little paragraph for each. Creature layer is probably one of the longest ones, just because I need to explain sort of my 3 archetypes for creature layers. For the classic dungeon, as the namesake Dungeons and Dragons would believe, is it's either a complex, which is a place where people live and work. It's a natural structure like a cave or a forest if you want to do something like a point crawl and turn that into a dungeon. Or it's a vault, and the vault comes in 2 subforms, which is the prison or vault. So you're either trying to protect things on the outside from whatever's within, or you're trying to protect the thing on the inside from whatever's outside. So it's just 2 sides of the same coin. But it determines how traps and monsters and creatures that are within that dungeon might function. So it's helpful to know which one you're trying to make. Alright, our isolated homestead. What is the best way for us to describe this? Let's say self-made. It's usually self-made. Of a person who... Not always a person. Creature. Yeah, I'll say of a human... Wait. Creature that has been ostracized, chosen, live in isolation. And let's say, I guess we say at low APLs. Yeah. Further away from the bosom of civilization. This point of interest is more likely is to be fully isolated. No other people or places around. That's really, that's really about it. Like, some of these are really easy to kind of explain. Like, a settlement's pretty easy to explain. You know, we all know what a village is, so we don't really need to explain it too much. So really the only thing that's showing up at settlements in my description is like, hey, sometimes minor settlements are attached to other things. For example, a bridge, POI crossing, will often be accompanied by a small hamlet that's travelers. Also, maybe a minor settlement. I guess we should say something about like higher level or higher APL. It's the here I guess higher the APL. Feel more sizable. Joining. I guess I should maybe there's probably I think there's a better way to descriptively rewrite that. I think this first sentence is good. We're gonna get rid of it. This sentence is okay. Then thinking there's a good way to do this. Talk about that. The witch's hut. Here let's say beyond forest edge, I guess hamlet. We'll see. Would be the okay. An example would be the witch's hut beyond the forest edge near a small. The further away from the bosom of civilization this point of interest is, the more likely it is to be fully isolated with no other people or places around. I think that works. I think we agree. I think that's a better way to say what I was trying to say, in a more descriptive sense. I'm not sure. Yeah, because technically all this other information, what we're doing is we're not including a bunch of this extra stuff. We're just trying to be like, isolated homestead, that's what it is, drop it into your game. And then trying to be like, hey, just so you know, other things often come with these things attached to them. I'm gonna pull this. So we have a combined thing. So previously, in previous iterations of my hex stalking thing, these were all split up into separately, like omens and information signs and warning signs were, I think omens and warnings were consolidated, but information signs were information, I'm saying signs, not necessarily a sign. but whatever this thing is, this site is communicating, those were two separate things. I was like, these keep coming up too often. I feel like these would be better consolidated in one thing. Now I've got that. Okay. Oh, no. Yeah. All right. There we go. Google Docs is real weird sometimes. Not too much to say about this. I have this kind of written out with our questions, so we can do that pretty easily. So it might be signage transmitting directions, laws of the land, borders, history, legend. I'm gonna say include. So that's our middle one. Mine may also warn against danger in a nearby location. Of a let's say a PWYW vicinity. Or warning against a particular behavior. The thing that comes to my mind is like and with a thief sign. So you see that in a lot of you see it in fantasy movies, but you also see it in other types of media, particularly like westerns or post-apocalyptic, where it's like, oh, this person got caught for thieving and we left them hanging out with a sign around them so people know that that's not tolerated around here and what the repercussions for those actions are. Have something like that. Well, more and omen, prophesizing something to come. So some of these are like physical signs that you can look at. Obviously, directional signage is like, hey, 15 leagues to Backwaterville, whatever. Some of them are symbolic signs such as border stones or like code law stones or stelae stand up and have some sort of information on it, like history, or it could be things that also fall in here are things like obelisks. I guess I could write that to be a little bit more specific. So I guess we could put like stelae. And I don't know. I think it's fine. I think I can trust that the audience, for whoever would pick it up, would hopefully be able to expand on that and understand that, hey, what does a history signage look like? It's going to be like some sort of document or a statue or an arch, or it could be a fountain. It's weird to have fountains. That's a very D&D thing, to have kind of fountains out in the middle of nowhere. That is a very old school D&D kind of thing. So if you want to add that to your game, this would also include that. Though honestly would probably be more of a actually I don't know. They don't really just have like just trick or trap. I guess a landmark. It would function as a landmark. And landmarks toe that line as well when it comes to like obelisks or like say as things you can use, cairns, things of that nature, or like wayfinding marks. But they can also be natural landmarks or unnatural. Or an open prophesizing something. Let's look down. I'm trying to think of. We've got like right. We have all these things: arches, border stones, monoliths, stela, clay, multiple. A dam, a fountain, a spring house, a well. All work. Mainly because most of the times those are signage for like, hey, there's water you can here. An earth moat is a big lump of rock that floats in the air. A meteorite, like an impact crater or something of that nature. Very prophetic things as the earth moat might be. Gibbet, hanging tree, oubliette. Oubliette's the hole in the ground where you are prisoners. A megalith, and those come in a few different ones. Cromlech, Dolmen, Menhir, Orthostat. You look those up. We've talked about Dolmen pretty often. And we don't talk about Cromlechs that much, but Dolmen and Menhirs we talk about. A maze. I like maze as signage for warning signage. Like, hey, stay out of this place. And we wanted people to stay out of this place, so we built a maze around it so people couldn't get to it. Which allows for a maze to exist in the wild. And if you watch the last mapping stream we did, we actually put a maze in there and then ended up putting what it was pointing to, which was there's a Genasi settlement that's nearby. So the Genasi have created this maze to kind of keep people away from them because they are kind of a ostracized people in the custom world that I have. They are the people who have been driven out of their homeland because of their connections with the forces of chaos, primordial chaos. But we also have fun things like roadside stands, which I believe with the maze, we actually rolled these two together. Rolled two. Like a lot of these, I roll two and then I choose my favorite or see if I can put them together. I believe I rolled a maze and a roadside stand. So it was the roadside stand, and then it allowed me to create this history to be like, oh, people were there. There was an issue. Once they figured out it was the Genasi, because the roadside stands are unattended. Once people figured out who is kind of putting out the produce and stuff like that, where's to be sold, that stuff. And then they got attacked, so they built a maze. Keep people away. A statue or petrified creature is also a fun one. This may be some omen thing. Maybe the omens. This is a fun thing you could pull, like if you wanted to, something like a Tarrasque-like creature, like a big nasty creature, and just like leave it petrified off someplace and be like, well, at some point that thing's gonna be probably unpetrified. And let's hope we're not around when that happens, because that would be bad. And same thing occupation wise. All right, I think we've hit most of this in our description. So I don't have roadside stands in there, but that is the one that's kind of not like the other ones. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to put in here. I don't think so. I think we've pretty much got it handled. So I think we're going to be good on that one. I think there's... I don't think so. I can't really see at first glance a natural way to work in like the roadside stand, which is fine because that could also be a meeting place. Like fairgrounds are a meeting place, so it could be. It would be weird for people to be meeting up at a roadside stand, but they could. So I can see you putting them in either one. And again, each of these terms are not, by no means, each of these categories, the 20 categories we have, are ironclad. There are things that kind of fit into multiple ones, so you can kind of cross-pollinate them. Like, there are a lot of things like landmarks that you might also... Right, we have it right here, like an archway. Even though this is supposed to be like a natural archway. But many of these are ancient carvings, geoglyphs, petroglyphs, stuff like that, which you might also consider to be signage. Tops, a clearing, a cairn. Cairn fits in there as well. Columns, earthworks, midden, mosaic, scaffold, wall, geyser, artesian well, hot springs. And none of these landmarks are like necessarily the super obvious things, like, hey, there's a side of like bear rock, big rock that kind of looks like a bear that people use for orientation. Because that stuff's pretty easy for the old like Skull Island kind of theme, or Skull Cave. I don't have to go for the lowest hanging fruit always. Real easy, but you can only have so many skull caves. Eventually you're gonna want something else. Okay, going to natural resource. I'm gonna copy guys. I've been thinking about, can I, there's a bunch of stuff I can put down in here. Obviously there's a bunch of stuff that I have down in here. But not all necessarily needed. And really what I should do is... But I wanted a way to have things be a little bit more regional to a very specific type of hex and environment that you're in. Especially when it came to things like flora and fauna, which is primarily all the stuff that's down here. Stuff that people might find. So, mahi-mahi, pomegranates, zucchini, aubergine, chef, onion, garlic. Gonna give me a little bit more go on. Because the metals and the minerals are pretty easy to come by. Not though. I'm trying to remember why I have bolded it, and I'm not sure why. Can't remember. It's been a while. Well, anyways, go on for that. Let's copy these and put them into our simplify, and we will move on to natural resource. Down there to make it for us. All right, so how do we want to structure this? This could be... I guess we just say a natural resource is. It can be anywhere from seen and undiscovered to a permanent I'm gonna say cultivation. Cultivation won't entirely. A the gathering, but gathering's not really. There's a word that I'm searching for. There's a little hole in my mind right now where I'm looking for that word. Not sure what it is. I'm gonna leave it where it is for right now. I think they should. Which might be something like a mine or plantation. So, which is nice because it kind of sets this natural resource apart from something like just a general settlement that's obviously going to have quite a bit of farmland around it, both as subsistence and you got to pay them taxes. So having that stuff, so it translates it a little bit different from generic farmland with villagers and peasants to something that's a little bit more like this is a plantation meant to exploit like a single crop. It's like a single crop farm. All that's meant to be is you have a whole bunch of people trying to, very much like a cotton plantation or like a silk farm or something like that. Maybe we should put that in here. We'll say the research. Water, flora, fauna. I guess resides makes it weird. It's like it's resting there. Not true. We'll just say exists. Resources can be at any stage of development and pristine and discovered to permanent operation exploit. I think that pretty much hits what we wanted to do. And I don't think I was doing this on some other one. No, someone. One does sometimes. I feel like info omen and warning signs are pretty vague as to whether there is a settlement around them, but I feel like with natural resources, they're often around it. Again, minor settlement is nearby that works. That will be true. Like a lot of these, that's very true. And again, just in general, and maybe I don't know, maybe we should put this somewhere else higher up. Is that the further you get away from sort of the heartland? So I had my world map broken up at its different scales into heartlands, marches, and wilds. So heartlands are like where most of the people live. Marches is the same thing as like the frontier, so it's kind of right at the edge of civilization. it's where the heartlands and the wild meet. There's that overflow, and then once you get into the wilderness, you can tell by these are 1d6 that you roll for occupation of that space. So in the heartland, about 50% chance that there's going to be some sort of occupation and points of interest. There's 1/3 chance that it's going to not have anybody, and then the lowest possibility is a 1 in 6 chance that monsters have taken it over. There are some sort of monsters out there. We have that where it might be like haunted, and there might be like ghosts. It might be like a bunch of zombies are there, or it could be, you know, goblins, kobolds, bugbears, whatever, beholder, a lich. You say it, it can go in there. It kind of gives you who's hanging out around there. In the marches, it gets a little bit more organized, whereas actually it's more likely that there's going to be monsters that have taken over a place. But just behind that is that there's a bunch of people there, and pretty unlikely that that place is just going to be left fallow because it's a very opportunistic area. Hey, how you doing, Mitchell? We are talking about points of interest stocking for doing hex maps. So creating a map for like a Dungeons and Dragons game or any style of TTRPG game, in which you make a big map and you put a whole bunch of like little adventure sites down there. That's what we're doing. That's what we're talking about. If you have any questions while we're going through it, free to ask. We'll take a stop and look at it. And then once we get out of the marches or the frontier and we get into that wilderness area, 50% of the time, there's not going to be any sort of settlement that's going with that. So if we had this thing where we have this natural resource and we rolled that it's being exploited, so maybe there's a plantation there, there's basically nothing else except the plantation there most of the time. Or the plantation might be overrun or being worked by some monsters. It's actually more likely. And it's pretty rare that there are people there. It just kind of depends where you are, and this works the same way all the way up the top when we do like our theming and stuff like that. It's the same sort of breakdown. So if we go all the way back at this down here, we talk about the occupation in the settled marches and wilds, same thing. Heartland, settled marches, frontier, same thing. Wilds or wilderness, same thing. So more likely to be artificial stuff, less likely to be artificial, and then once you get into the wilds, it's the least likely to be artificial, which would be constructs, giants, humanoids, oozes, undead. Because undeads tend to be humanoids. So if there aren't people there, there's not going to be undead there most of the time. Because we don't get a lot of stats for things like zombie bears. So you could make a zombie bear if you wanted to. Sometimes that's useful because things like the beast category of monsters don't go very high in the difficulty. So if you need to make them more difficult, kind of add other aspects to them. So you might add more monstrosity features to them. Make them undead, or make them aberrant, or make them a fey or fiendish version of them. Go back to our document. Yeah, I think we nailed that one. So a natural resource such as water, flora, fauna, or minerals exists in this location. The resource can be at any stage of development, pristine and undiscovered, a permanent operation for exploitation. Mine, a silk farm, or plantation, or something else. Examples. Yep. Often a minor settlement is nearby that works. So the further out you get, less likely that will be. Again, this is supposed to be the simplified version. We can already see me trying to take the simple version and turn it back into the 50-page document, and I'm like, I'm trying to cut it down, not expand it out. Construction, pretty easy. Our construction, you can grab it from here, and we're just gonna grab this information. That way I can. Now there is a very funny thing that can happen with this table. I haven't had it happen yet, but I'm sure it will happen to me one day. Is that I could roll for a small settlement to be there while it's also a construction type for a settlement. So if it was that case, what I would be like is that this settlement is trying to expand. It's experiencing some sort of boom. It's growing a whole lot. And so there's now like this weird like suburb aspect of it that's being added. It's expanding beyond its walls or whatever. So we'll take this, we'll drop this down under 11. So I can use it as reference, writing, and we'll write 3. So this can be a I guess the easiest thing to do is to roll a d10. Yeah, I guess we should start there. I don't want that bolded. Roll 1d10 on the D26. UI stable. For the type of, I guess, for what's being constructed. We cite a new construction or repairs an old construction site to an existing. Consider how complete construction is and if it is being actively worked or is currently inactive. Why? Construction sites are often, how do we word it? Include a small settlement where workers are I don't need these. So yeah, it was super easy. Those are always really, really easy together. So in my robust one, I put this whole table in there so I don't have to flip back to it. In this one, you guys will have to do the work. Sorry. I'm trying to keep it short and to the point. Good. Now you might ask why 1d10, and if we look at the table, that'll be pretty self-evident. So if we get 1d10, we get everything up to construction. So they might be building a settlement, a holding, or a fortification, like a keep or a manor house, stuff like that. A religious site, like a temple or church, some sort of travel haven, so like an inn or a tavern or a caravanserai or whatever. A wilderness structure, a horse lodge, etc., etc. Hunting lodge. Kind of thing. Could be a crossing. They're building like a bridge or a ferry. They might be building a creature lair. Remember, that's like our classic dungeon, so a dungeon's being constructed. I like this one a lot because oftentimes I feel like when I'm playing D&D or another TTRPG, it's really hard, and it happens in a lot of fiction, actually, a lot, especially fantasy fiction. That in fantasy fiction everything's old. There are tons of ruins of stuff, but there's very rarely anything that's being made. There's very rarely like new construction, so it always feels like the world is really static and decaying, and not like, oh, there are things that are decayed, and there are things that exist, and there are new things that are being built. So I want to add that back into the game because it's really hard to find that, especially in a D&D or TTRPG setting, especially in a fantasy setting, where things are being built or being repaired. Some repairs are a little bit more likely, but unlikely to see people building a new structure. And one of the things that really like set me off on that is, at this point many years ago, playing Red Dead Redemption 2, and you see the guys that are building a house, right? They're building a house, doing. And so as you progress through the game and you come back to that site, the house is more built. Very nice. So it kind of shows you that passage of time and like things going forward. And this especially works, I think, really well when you see things like crumbling ruins in like Rome or Roman ruins in Italy, and lots of other places in Europe specifically. I'm sure it happens everywhere. But the idea is that they would go to all these Roman ruins, and then they would like pick the stones up rather than making new stones, and take them back and make stuff with the stones that were already like quarried and cut. So they didn't have to do all that labor. They just go grab the stuff that already existed, pilfer it from ruins, and use it to build their new houses or whatever they're making, rather than quarrying new stone and doing all that stuff. I was like, that's a really cool way to show like old stuff becomes new stuff. So I want some of that also to persist in the world that I make. Your internet sucks. What did you miss? I mean, we're just going through stuff right now, so not a lot. We're just finishing up our construction aspect. So 1 through 10, the crossings, creature layers, which are our dungeons, meeting places, which are like those holiday or fairgrounds or outdoor marketplaces, common greens, those kinds of things. So they might be making walls or stuff like that, or leveling the ground, or doing all sorts of stuff, putting in some sort of like infrastructure. And we might come across that one of those isolated homesteads actually being made, so it's not made yet. Like I said, that's one of the reasons, like the way that I put that stuff in and being like, what percentage of this building is complete the construction? So that way I know the first time they visit it, how my players visit it, how much the construction has been completed. So if they come back to it in weeks or months and be like, and now it's this percentage complete. So it feels like that time passes within the game and the world isn't just fully static, which I really like. And that natural resource, so they're making those plantations. They're digging out the mine, so the mine's not active yet. They're making the mine, they're digging it out, doing things like that. Or they're making those omens, those warning signs, those informational signage. So you can see people like putting up the signpost at the crossroads that tells you like which direction goes where and how many miles away it is and stuff like that. And so that stops there. So that way you're not doing things like, you're not constructing ruins, you're not constructing conflict areas, or no trespassing areas, or treasure rumors, or wandering monsters, these sort of things that can't really be constructed. Some of them can, like you could construct a landmark, but I think that we pretty much cover most of that in our signage, even though you can have artificial land, like those cairns. But if they were making a sign like that, they could be constructing a cairn. But you also don't construct things like ruins and remains and hazard. So that's why why you roll a d10. It's constructed that way. Perfect. Bam. So really the only thing that we have left to do there is, I don't think we have anything. And where we were. Yeah. Well, it's going to bring us to number 12, which is a very interesting one, which is going to be roll twice and combine results, ignore duplicates. I say I don't typically ignore the duplicates, I just make it the most of whatever that thing it can be. Well, there we go. All right. Hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah, it's at least it looks like you can hear me. Yeah, there's something that's wrong with whatever the new audio drivers that Windows has installed that really screws up my mic every once in a while. It happens about once a stream now, and it's super cool and doesn't tell me that it's going to do it. So I don't find any notice that it happens until somebody in chat tells me. Great. No, I've been doing it for a while. It's just there's just something wrong with the audio drivers, and I can't figure out what it is, unfortunately. So if you ever want to roll dice for Dungeons & Dragons, you can just do this in Google. Be like, hey, 1d20, and it'll give you all the dice you need. That. Right there. So as far as D&D, how it works, you're generally going to be rolling this guy, a d20 most of the time. Usually that plus some sort of number with it. That you're going to add. That's going to be like a modifier. So if you're a strong character, you'll be adding your strength. If you're a dexterous character, you'll be adding your dex. Depending on what you're trying to do, there's 6 core stats. There's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Is it on Steam? I guess the closest thing is you can get Baldur's Gate 3, which is about 90% of D&D. It's very close to it. So Baldur's Gate 3 will do it for you. And if you want to learn the rule sets, that pretty much plays the rule sets as is. There are some differences. Make it a little bit more video gamey, but otherwise, very easy to pick up. Yeah, no worries. And with that, I realized that I am out of my cup of coffee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to go refill up on my coffee, and I'll be back, and we will knock this out and finish it out. All right? Hang in there. All right, I am back. But yeah, and this is super helpful if you guys don't understand or don't really have a point of reference for what something like this document is that we've been working on is used for. I guess I could show you a map that might be helpful. Let's go ahead and pull up the course I like, which is HTML, and we'll show you what a map looks like. In fact, let's just pull up the one from our solo game. How about that? From A River Apart. Go. I'm going to zoom out a little, and then I will throw it over so you guys can see. Moment. Zoom out. Pants. All right, there we go. That's So here's what that kind of looks like. So this is split up. You don't need to worry too much about the stuff up at the top. That's not going to be useful, guys. As I said, when I do these hex maps, I do them in different scales. So the stuff at the top is just a zooming out, really. And so we're only looking to look at the stuff down at the bottom, which is our zoom in. Zoom in a little bit. When we're building it, it's got our little biomes in there. So different forests, plains, these nice little orange ones are like scrubland. Some wetlands, a nice big lake called Green Lake, and plenty of pine trees because that just happens to be the area of the world that we're in. But you might also see that there are a bunch of little icons down here, and each of those icons is the point of interest, which is the table that we're using. This one shows this info. So some of these are more developed than others. So I haven't really developed this one yet because it's kind of far out. So let's get one that's maybe a little... Actually, most of these are not going to be developed. I forgot because we're keeping a separate key log for this. But you can see there's a settlement here. This is White Birch Inn. This is where our characters currently are. They have finally made it to White Birch Inn across Green Lake. They started way down here. And they took the road, boop, 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 traveled up to here. Technically to here. Took the ferry over here. Talked to these guys at the Priory. Decided they couldn't take the Brooklyn ferry, which is right here to get across Green Lake. Went down here instead. Hired a couple of boatmen. And took us up here. And in the process of getting all the way there, we had a giant eagle swoop in and grab one of our fisher people, one of our guides, and make off with them. And there was nothing we could do about that. The giant eagle just swooped by and just picked them up a people snack and headed off. And they have come up here and they have finally gotten to White Birch Inn, in which one of our characters has gotten into a little bit of a problem with the Windwalkers, who are sort of a gypsy Romani kind of people who are in the area. And we're going to be trying to do a little bit of intel before our next game, which should be this Saturday. No fingers crossed in case. But we should be doing it this Saturday. We're going to play the solo RPG again. And at that point, we're going to try to get some intel about what's going on in all these black hexes, because we don't know what's in this area of the world, because it is technically beyond the borders of our lands. And that is what we are tasked with rectifying. We are being expansionists. We are going out here and we are going to claim some of this for our crown prince. But we don't know what the heck's out here. So we got to start talking to people, see if they can tell us what's out here. But that gives an example of what these tables are for and why we put these things here. So I use these tables to fill in those spaces. You know what's in a hex when we run across it. And we'll be doing that live. If you watch the solo RPG, you'll see me do these rolls live and create these points of interest as we come across them. As in the solo RPG, there's no other dungeon master or game master who provides that for me. I have to do that, plus also be the player. A little bit of a different way to play, but still quite fun. That's it for the map. We don't need anything for the map. We're not working on the map today. We work on that on other streams. So, Where were we? We were just finished construction. So we're on roll twice and combine results. Not really going to be a lot, a lot to say here. Trying to think. I don't think there's anything specific on here. Yeah, this is like my actual guide in my big like 50-page document. Under 12, there's no instructions. It's roll twice and combine results. So you're just going to roll on that same table again. So let's say, for example, I rolled a 12. Like, all right, so then I just rolled 2 and try to stick them together. So I rolled an 18 and a 16. So for that, that would be a treasure roomer. So there's some sort of treasure roomer that's here. Might be a cache, some sort of armory, a treasury, a storeroom, a crypt, a cistern, a reliquary, or a vault. Might be fake, as in there's no treasure there, it's just a rumor. Could be looted, it could be somebody laying an ambush for us, it could be guarded, could be trapped, could be just hard to get to. Could be actually easy pickings, actually nobody's just gone out here and found it yet. But it's also this landmark. So we already had this highlighting, so let's say it's in a ravine. So the ravine is the landmark. It's like, oh yeah, so that's when people are navigating across land, they'll tell you, oh, you'll hit the ravine, you'll cross the ravine, or you'll follow the ravine north or south or west or whatever direction it goes, till you reach such and such, and then from there you go west, etc. So it could be just hard to reach because maybe the ravine's really deep. Maybe it's more like a canyon. And so people don't generally sort of maybe drop in. It might be like 40, 50 feet deep. Maybe people don't climb all the way down in there to like see if there's any treasure in there. Maybe that's it, if it's just easy pickings. So when it comes to our simplified thing, there's not a lot to say. So you can pretty much just take this sentence right here, this part of the sentence, and copy it and paste it down here. And our notation is roll 2d20 and combine both results into a single point. I guess what I should also say is that I'm thinking you could end up with like a settlement, which maybe, let's say we're doing league hexes, so maybe a hamlet. But then if you also had a holding that also has this sublocal steading to it, yep, I mean, I think we can leave it and be like, well, you can just try to combine all the results. That's possible. We'll just add that a little bit in there because sometimes that might be difficult. But I was thinking, it's like, well, if you rolled something that was a settlement, but then also something that instead of having a sub-settlement, maybe ended up having an occupation that was monsters, and maybe it's like, oh, well, maybe this is an area where the monsters and the townspeople live in harmony, or maybe they are actively not, they are in disharmony. And they are actively fighting with each other, maybe over the town, maybe over this site, whatever. But there's not otherwise a lot to say about it. You just do it again. I think we can take this out. Ignore duplicate rolls. And I think I don't want to add any more to that. But I think if I clarify it more, it will actually be less helpful for me. I think I both want people, if they roll a 12 again, to not continue rolling more and more types of things to try to cram 4 or maybe 6 types of things into one single hex. But also, if you roll, say, 2 holdings, do you want both of them in there? Maybe. Maybe. Like I said, I don't always follow that advice. But you could. Like, I'm thinking about, I just finished up the first Kingdom Come Deliverance not that long ago, and you do spend a lot of time in, what is it, Tamford? Talmberg. There we go. Talmberg, which has 2 castles. So it's not unheard of for 2 castles to be like right next to each other, because they fully are, and Talmberg was a real place with real castles. It's not Talmberg. I'm blanking on the name. It's whatever town that you end up spending the most of your time in the game. There are 2 castles there. So you don't have to ignore duplicate rolls. I sometimes don't if I have a good idea about why 2 things are there. So, like, if you ended up with 2 natural resources, you could be like, oh, there's a plantation, but also maybe there's also a mine. Or maybe there's also like a spring or something that's there, the headwaters of a river. Alright, so we said when we did construction, which was number 11, that you roll a d10 for type. Ruin, that we're moving on to, is the same thing, except you roll a d12 for type, which means that you can have a ruin of a construction of a something, which I like. Which is different from it being an active construction or an inactive construction. If it's like, maybe it's a construction site that got attacked or was torn down, something happened to it. Maybe it has just degraded over time. So let's go down to ruins. See what else we got down here. And I think that's really all we need. I don't think, like I said, we're not putting the sub tables in here. You guys are using this, you can roll them yourself. You roll them bones yourself. You don't need me. Trying to make this as simple as possible. All right. So we really have just the 3 things that we need to know about the ruin. We need to know what kind of type it is. Grab this. Grab this sentence again. We're gonna copy it. And we're gonna put it down here. Whoa. What's been ruined? I guess I should say for what? Ruin types. Ruins? Ruined. Type of ruins. There we go. Ruin's kind of a strange word in English because you can use it pretty interchangeably in its singular or plural form. You can say the ruin of a castle, or castle ruin, but you can also say castle ruins. And nobody's going to be confused about what you're talking about. So basically we have the age of condition, you know, like how long ago that it was ruination. What the cause was. And why somebody hasn't kind of come in and repaired that yet. Here, the age, the ruins. That recent, old, ancient. And what caused ruination? just pick out some choice ones. It was abandoned. You can tell that these need to be updated. I put it in. I can spell most of the time. Attacked. Environment. We might put that like disaster. Let's use disaster then. Disaster. Circumstances. Better. Hey, you're back. Good to see you. Look at the age or condition of the ruins. What caused the ruination? Also consider why the ruins have yet to be overtaken or repaired by a new faction. If the normally have a minor settlement, what is its status? So this one, rather than being more of a, some of these other paragraphs are a little bit more descriptive. This one's just going to ask you a bunch of questions that you need to get when you're making the room, because it's pretty straightforward. You're going to roll a d12 on the d20 X stocking point of interest table for the type of ruin. You can consider how old are the ruins, what caused it to fall into ruination, were they abandoned, were they attacked by somebody, some sort of disaster, mysterious circumstances, as in nobody knows, etc. Consider why the ruins have yet to be overtaken or repaired by a new faction. This is a little bit important when we talk about like the historical aspect of things like castles in the real world, is that people didn't just attack a castle and then just like and break down its walls with a trebuchet or battering rams and all that good stuff during an attack, breaking the siege. And in that process, they were like, all right, anyways, and then just walk away from it. Like, no, people pretty much immediately started repairing it so they could turn it back into a usable castle for themselves. So generally somebody's going to be like, there's just a castle sitting here that's like 75% operational. Let's just fix it up real quick. So you need to come up with some sort of reason as to maybe why it is ruined. Which is great, is it's like maybe it's taken over by monsters, or it's haunted, or it could be any of these would explain like it was abandoned for some reason. Maybe people know what that reason is. Maybe they don't. It could be, and that could just be the question, like actually nobody knows this, and that might be enough to bring your D&D adventurers to be like, "Should we go check that out and see if there's anything left in there?" People just leave that place alone. And if it was attacked and it's been destroyed so much, there's just, it would basically like be like building a new castle, which can take a very long time. So nobody was like, well, we're not going to invest that money, or we don't want anybody to be able to hold this against us, so we'll flatten it to the ground. Could be a disaster, like that's definitely a thing that happens with any sort of structure, to modern day structures, where the ground underneath is not really firm and it's not settled, and it shifts and stuff falls down, and you can't really build on top of it because the ground not allow for that. Lots of things sink into swamps and stuff like that, mires. And again, you can always just be like, mysterious circumstances. There's a curse on it, maybe. You can come up with any sort of like wackadoo kind of stuff that you want to throw in there. Have D&D kind of fun with. Give you an idea, and a lot of those will tell you why it hasn't been taken over and repaired by people before. But if that point of interest, we'll say if the POI would normally have some sort of minor settlement attached to it, what's its status? Yeah, that should not be. Now you got some popcorn. I'd go for some popcorn. I'd go for some popcorn for sure. Oh, you have a streamer community? That's cool. Cool. Yeah. Maybe take a look at that. See what that's all about. Sure. Alright, we're moving on. Conflict area. So we're going to grab some of this. Same things here that we're going to use as feeds for talking about stuff. We're going to drop down here. Make quite a bit of headway today. We started off way back up here at Isolated Homestead. Alright, so we've made quite a bit of progress. Probably not going to finish this out today, or long too. I got some today. Nice, yeah. I'll check it out. Thanks. So our conflict area. We kind of want to know the cause, the location, like what type of area it is, and the status of the conflict. This is what when I think about like video games or stuff where I see this come up a lot. The example that always jumps to my mind is The Witcher 3, where you're like, oh, there's a war camp in there, and there's like a bunch of battlegrounds, like what, 2 or 3, like battlegrounds you can come across, lots of camps, stuff like that. There's the ferry or dock that's being held by the Nilfgaard. Can't remember who's holding the ferry or the docks on the river. Haunter. I don't remember. It's been a minute since I played it. You didn't notice I'm writing this whole document. Yeah, no, and I've been working on this document for a long, long time. Yeah, we're knocking it in. Sliding things in right now, yeah. This is conflict area. What is it? What's the status of it? It's an old conflict, you know. Is it haunted? Haunted battlegrounds are a nice, fun thing to throw in there. Conflict area. I think I want to talk about location first. I'll say styles. Include battlefields, camps, earthworks, and we'll say like bivouacs. Slash earthworks. Mass graves. Anything I can do to add an extra word. Why are determine I guess I should say determine the parties in conflict. Why there and the conflict's cause. Blood feud, borders, pressure. I think it would take 4 per round. Say ideology. Too many letters. Resources. A lot of etceteras in this. And what is the status? Conflict. It could be pre-battle, mid-battle, post-battle, or the site of an old conflict. Might have salvage or we'd have salvaged. I think they should cover pretty much everything here. I don't know if it's cool. It's certainly nerdy what I'm doing. That's definitely what I'm doing is incredibly nerdy. But I think it's cool. And since it's me doing it, I guess that's the only person who truly matters in the end. But I'm glad you like it. Yeah, location styles include battlefields, camps, bivouacs, or earthworks, mass graves, etc. Determine the parties in conflict and the conflict's cause, blood feud, border, ideology, resources, etc. And what is the status of the conflict? It could be pre-battle, mid-battle, post-battle, or the site of an old conflict that might have salvage or be haunted. They might be able to find an old conflict area, might be able to pick up, maybe there's like a magic weapon or some magic items that are in there that are buried in there. If it's haunted, that's even worse. Might have zombies, undead soldiers, ghosts. There are also a number of monsters that pervade things like that. There are carrion crawlers, corpse collectors, necromancers who, you know, need a cheap workforce of undead people. Be all sorts of, I think, ghoulies and ghastlies that might be hanging around. There could be literal ghouls, which would be bad. Ghouls are always a bad time. Ghasts are even worse. Hit you with a paralyze and then they eat you alive. Not fun. I think that pretty much hits it for conflict area. Pretty straightforward for the most part. Not too much going on. They are fun locations. I think it's important to remember, like, mid-battle, oftentimes when we see things like fantasy media, or even sometimes like sci-fi media, when they talk about a battle, it's usually something that happens in a few hours, whereas historically and even modern day, like, battles are something that takes place occasionally over a few hours, but most of the times it's over many days or weeks, or can be, depending on the battle, could be months, even years it can take at a single battlefield. Especially if you start looking at World War examples, where you're looking at things like Stalingrad, or, you know, the Battle of Britain, which is kind of a bucket that we toss all of the British air raid stuff into. But also things like World War I stuff, where the trenches don't move a whole lot over weeks and months, so they kind of just hang out in the same areas. And consistently, you can look at something like the 100 Years' War, which is not a consistent state of warfare that happens, but a general 100 years in which the French and English are at war a lot. And so a lot of the same places they're fighting over and over and over again. So we're going to move on to no trespassing area. Another fun one. I love having this one here. It's always fun when it comes up. Collapse that. Yes, I should probably... guess I should probably take all of it. I'm not going to use all of it, but I'm going to take all of it. for our no trespassing area. Gonna give us a bunch. Well, technically we don't need theme. I'm not worrying about theme in the simplified document. Theme is something I just do. It kind of is a artistic kind of guiding motif. So if I roll up dragons, it doesn't mean that dragons are going to be there, but it means that things are going to be, if I need an idea of something it could be, I could be like, oh, it's dragon-like in some way. So if I was like, oh, let's look at the conflict area. If I knew it was an old battleground and I knew there was a magic item there and I wanted to be like, I've got dragons as a theme, what might be, I might say scale mail, because dragons have scales and scale mail is a type of armor in D&D. Be like, cool, it's a suit of magic scale mail. Or it can be a wand of dragon's fire or something like that. Very easy to kind of use that motif to add stuff in. But I'm just not adding it. I'm not adding it in for this super simplified version. You're so confused. What are you confused by? No, it's incredibly overall. Yeah, I understand. If you're stepping into it, it's your first step into it. You're stepping into the deep end. I fully understand. I didn't play this game and I can't understand much of this document. That's okay. It's okay. This is something that would be like for the dungeon master. This would be for somebody who's running the game. So if you are a player stepping in and play it, you do not need to know basically any of it. This is a for the game runner's eyes only for the most part. But I put it out here just for people who want to run their own game. Or they want to be masochists like me and play the game by myself sometimes. Which is a little bit of extra work, a little bit different than playing it with a group, but is also very fun. Don't way. All right, so I think I want to keep age here because that's helpful to know if this is like a new area that's dropped in, or if this is a place that's been here a long time. I feel like there should be maybe a weight towards ancient with a no trespassing area, but that's my own bias, I feel like. And then we have all our different types that they could be. And we have our occupation, who's living there now, if anybody, what kind of common travelers you might encounter when you're in this area, and how likely it is that you're going to come across those people. Again, in the places that are more civilized, where there are a lot more people nearby, you're more likely to run into those common travelers. Less likely you're way out in the boon, beyond civilization. All right. Area of restricted. We'll say interlopers are not tolerated. No, we're in area of restricted land where interlopers. Interlopers? Well, if you're an interloper, you're already inside. Interlopers do well. Wide berth. That's good. Yeah. See you later. Take it easy. Nice. Yeah, I'll check it out. No worries. All right. Let's hop in. I guess first thing we want to do is the type. These areas. Tribal lands. Neutral monster. Domains. Sacred or desecrated sites. Means of the Fae. Other strange folk. I'll say otherworldly. That basic writing thing that I tried to do, it got burned within my brain during college to avoid excessive use of that. There are a lot of sentences in which you will put the word that where it doesn't need to be. An area of restricted land, travelers would do well to give a wide berth. That is not needed. Consider. It'll say determine how old the area is and who occupies it now. Like the name. Despite the name, travelers can be common. They include adventurers, farmers, nobles, their retinue, bandits. We should just say hill folk, I suppose. Hill folk could probably be the most common. Hill folk, herders, pilgrims, the wanderers, and to civilization, it is more likely is to come across such travelers. All right, I think that will suffice. I hope. Let's get a little read back. An area of restricted land, travelers would do well to give a wide berth. These areas can be hillfolk tribal lands, neutral monster domains, sacred or desecrated sites, or the domain of the Fae and otherworldly. Otherworldly. Well, we should probably fix that. I need a good synonym for other. Go. I like diverse. We need the Fae and diverse otherworld creatures. Or maybe we should just go addition. Yeah, additional otherworldly creatures. From how old the area is and who occupies it now. Despite the name, travelers can be commonplace. They include adventurers, performers, nobles and their retinue, hillfolk, herders, pilgrims, monsters, traders, wanderers, and many And we just did 1 minute. That's good. The closer to civilization the site is, the more likely it is to come across such travelers. All right, I like that. I think that works well. Pretty good. I got a little bit of coffee left, so I think we'll probably get 1 more in. Unless this one goes really fast. I don't think treasure room fast. We'll do that. We'll do another one, but I think leaving just these for the bottom will be a good place to do that for another stream, and then we'll start putting all this stuff together. So this part is pretty much done. So the POI, point of interest descriptions, are going to be pretty much done, and those will be ready to be dropped into the document pretty much as is. Or maybe this one. I think this will work better if I drop those. Okay. Treasure rumor. Here we go. Knock it out. Treasure rumor. Grab this. It's gonna be very similar. I think we'll pull the occupation too. Yeah, that's fine. I'll take it. I'll take it. 1, please. Alright. Treasure room. Drop it in. Bada bing. Bada boom. And here we go. Alright, so which do we think is the most important for us to talk about first? I think that's probably going to be the type of location it is. I think we go location, age, and status, then occupation. And creatures in nearby hexes often can provide rumor that this it can communicate treasure rumor to it. So, how do people learn about the treasure rumor? Creatures in nearby hexes. Get this. I don't have the map up right now, but there is, I think, at least 1 treasure rumor. It's nowhere near where we are, so I haven't been really thinking about it. But certainly in the game that I'm running, the group has come across a couple treasure rumors. They have not gone and checked out either one of them yet. Those are very much like little side mission things. So it doesn't really kind of go with the full brunt of the campaign, or like the campaign's arc. So it's something they have to kind of like set aside time to be like, we want to go check out that rumor actually that somebody told us about treasure that was in that area. And you can be specific about what's in it, or maybe not. I don't think I have that in here, and I think I should probably do that. I think that would be a little bit more helpful. Let's do that. I'm going to add this to our full big boy table. Put this in here. What specific is rumored to be here? Sometimes the rumor, because previously it's been like the rumor of the place itself was it. Like tombs are very easy, like tombs and things like that. Pharaohs. There's a good place you can go to. There's probably something lucrative if you want to do a little grave robbing. Like being like, oh, there are pyramids over there if you want to go get the dead pharaoh's treasure. Yeah. Brave the mummy's curse. But it's also helpful to be like, if you were looking for the Book of the Dead, you would go to this specific pyramid. So I think maybe that's our first iteration there. Is there a specific treasure that's the source through? I'll say at the source. I think that might be interpreted weirdly. How old this is more specifically, is the rumor old rather than the location? Recent, old, or even ancient? So if we want to think about like an ancient rumor of treasure, would be like when we would think about like sunken like Spanish galleons coming back from the New World that are just full up to the brim with gold that are presumably somewhere in the Atlantic. Have not been found now. Maybe exist, maybe don't. I mean, there's probably a ship down at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, but also the Atlantic's real deep. That's like that's where the Titanic is, and Marianas Trench, like really deep down there. We can't really get down there. Some people try, and some people unfortunately die doing that, as has been told to us in recent history. Quite the tragedy. The location, a secret cache, armory, treasury, crypt, reliquary, vault, etc. I'm gonna take out treasury. As the name suggests, not all rumors are true. Might be fake. Perhaps. As a lure, not a. There's a already looted, guarded, wrapped. Hard to read. I left easy pickings off. Easy pickings would be. Oh. I like easy pickings because it's like, oh, it's fun to be like, oh, actually, just nobody ever believed it and nobody went and got it. Which feels like a very kind of Nathan Drake adventure, being like, nobody believed that it was out there, and I found it. I knew it was real. I believed the whole time. And we'll put down that like treasure rumors are these sites. And we'll say these areas. By settlements or monsters. Maybe I should just make it this last sentence. These areas. Let's see. Because I'm thinking about the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indy gets chased by the boulder and all that stuff. But at the very end of that kind of sequence, then gets chased off by the local populace, the indigenous peoples that are there, and is running away from them. And I'm like, there are like people there, usually just not this place that's hanging out by itself. Sometimes it is. And again, in the big boy version of this, I roll for that to determine whether that is true or not. And the further away we get from civilization, the less likely it is that there are going to be people. As we go through the frontier, the more likely it is monsters, and then once we get out into the wild, more likely it is it's just hanging out by itself, where that land's been forgotten or abandoned or whatever, overgrown, nature has reclaimed it, etc. All right, so that gets us all the way through 16. Which is exactly where I wanted to get. So we have done a fine job. We have done it. We have completed it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you need to take care of before we hop off. I don't think anything on this side. So again, this coming Saturday, we're going to be doing the solo RPG thing again. So we're going to drop in. We're going to do that. We're going to see if we can get any more information, and Christoph won't have any trouble with the Windwalkers and his gambling he got roped into doing. I think that's that. We'll be working on some more stuff like this kind of going forward in some of our streams. So if you like this stuff, hang around. We're going to do a lot more of that. So just in general, hey, if you like this stream, give it a like. I appreciate it. If you want to see more of this stuff, give us the follow, the subscribe, do that stuff. It's going to help us grow the channel. If you don't got the money for it, I understand. We've all been there. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially over on the YouTube, which if you're on Twitch, the YouTube is at RedRaggedFiend. It's all the same place. Go check it out if you want to watch old videos of stuff that we've done. Lots of other streams. If you want to catch back up on the solo RPG stuff before we do it on Saturday, there's a whole playlist that's got everything in it that you need to know. You can probably skip ahead through if you... Oh. Alright, I got you. If you want to see this stuff in action, I actually build out that hex map we looked at earlier in some of the very first session. So I included the stuff of me kind of building this section of the world and the NPCs that are in it and the different political factions and stuff that's going on with it. So if you're interested in that stuff in world building, whether that's D&D and TTRPG or specific or just general, you can check out that stuff and you can see me do this in action as I build up that map. Other things, I think that's about it. Everything else is down in the description. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. This is always fun. I have a lot of fun jumping in streams, and I'm going to see you real soon. All right?